Welcome everyone to the January 22nd YouTube Slate preview here on the Fantasy Cruncher YouTube page. Please subscribe, like, and then leave in the comment section if you want to win a free week of Fantasy Cruncher Pro. The Boston Celtic that will score the most fantasy points today. Leave that in there along with your Fantasy Cruncher username, and we'll enter you in a drawing at the end of the week to win a free week of Fantasy Cruncher Pro. So do that. Really no reason not to. It costs you nothing. So again, subscribe, like, and leave the comment who will score the most points for the Boston Celtics. We've got 12 games, so we do not have a lot of time to just chit-chat. I'm going to try to move these as fast as I can. There's a couple games where I'm just really not interested in anyone, so we'll just kind of skim past those. But we got 12 of these bad boys, so let's get started. Sacramento, 1-point favorites at Detroit, 223 total. Things I notice here is that the pricing feels pretty good on everyone but Buddy Hield. Buddy Hield just went off last game as well. Was very effective from the field. Missed some shots late, but early on just couldn't miss. Much better matchup here against Detroit than that Miami matchup. 6,800 for him. Still a little too cheap given his ceiling. Everything else looks about right. Bagley's price is finally up to where it should be in the 6K range. Bogdan's been bad, so it's really tough to play him. Bazemore and company should be able to play today as well. So the rotation should be back a little wider. So I don't mind these guys, but I'm not desperately attempting to get them. On the Pistons side, Drummond is a game-time decision. We'll see. I expect him to play. Kennard's still out. Markieff Morris is a game-time decision, and everyone else is still out. I don't really see any plays here. Sekou, I guess, is okay, but he's been kind of cooling off a little bit of late. Christian Wood just isn't getting the minutes. Bruce Brown isn't really playing enough point guard to pay off this price. It's been a lot of Derrick Rose. Derrick Rose still on that minutes restriction most of the time. You know, unless the game's going to overtime or super, super tight. 7K for him on a guy playing 30 minutes tops. Can't really do that either. So this is one of those games where really nothing really is popping out for me. So let's move on to the next one. Oklahoma City and Orlando. Chris Paul's price is still too cheap. But, you know, I'm not expecting 30% usage rate unless someone sits of the big four. So it looks like they're all scheduled to play. The big four, Chris Paul, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Danilo Gallinari, and Dennis Schroeder. If all four of those are going to play, I really don't see a need to play Chris Paul. Dennis Schroeder at 6K is probably the max I'd pay for him. He has a ceiling here, but he's going to have to hit upper 30s in minutes, which is always tough to do coming off the bench. So, against the Magics, this is the lowest total of the day. Don't really feel like I need to have to push anyone in here. Magic side, kind of more of the same. Vooch would be alright if Noel and Adams were out and got Mike Muscala as a matchup. Wouldn't mind Muscala if Noel and Adams both missed, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think one of them will be able to play. So that would be the one value play, I guess, is if Mike Muscala was out there to play 30 minutes, but I don't think we're going to really need that today. So again, another game, 7 p.m. start, not really all that into. Philly and Toronto. Joel Embiid's still out. Philly's prices are all priced up. The full Toronto team's back, so this isn't the cupcake it's been for a little bit here. Everyone's back. So, you know, Tobias Harris, 7,300. I could see it, but again, it's not really like popping out for me. Ben Simmons has been on a tear, and Tobias Harris hasn't had the Tobias Harris makes all the shots game, which is inevitably going to come while Joel Embiid is out. But I'm not sure this is the greatest spot. Pascal is back. Good defender. Tobias playing more 4. I guess I can see it, but I don't think it's going to be an active priority for me today. And then for Toronto, everyone's back. Like Pascal Siakam's price at 6,900, still too cheap. Once he gets his minutes back, he's going to be able to kill this price. It's just when are the minutes going to come back? Is it tonight? Is it the next game? His minutes have been steadily going up, 25, 24, 29. So he's getting close. He played 30 minutes his first game back too. So I think he'll be close to getting back to 33, 34 minutes. But Al Horford, good defender. You can play him here and just try to bank on this being the ceiling game, but I wouldn't get too carried away with it. As for everyone else on Toronto, the whole team's finally healthy, so I wouldn't get too carried away. All these guys are going to lose some minutes, so their prices seem cheap for what they've been the last month, but again, the situation has totally changed, so no reason to go crazy here. I promise you, there are better games ahead, and we've got one right away. It's the Clippers. It's the Atlanta Hawks. Paul George, game time decision with his hamstring. Kawhi Leonard is out for rest. He will be out for rest. So let's just see if Paul George has been rolled in. I don't think he has been. No, we don't have an injury update yet, so we'll have to keep an eye out on that. Kawhi Leonard's not playing any back-to-backs, so the price on these guys are expensive, but I'm not sure they're expensive enough. Lou Will, 7,300 with no Paul George and Kawhi. He's going to have all the usage he can handle. I think that's a pretty fair price for him. Montrez, 6,800 going up against John Collins and Alex Len. Well, if Len plays, I think that's a pretty fair price. There's some ceiling upside here as well. JaMychal Green is too cheap. Landry Shamit's probably too cheap at 3,800. That's probably the one I like the most. He'll probably play 35 minutes in this game. That's probably the one I like the most in terms of the value options. Rick Ruder, he could play minutes, but not really excited about it. So for me, the favorite option here is definitely Landry Shamet, 3,800. I think that's too cheap. But I do like Harrell. I do like Lou Williams as well as options against this Atlanta Hawks team that really can't stop anyone. And there's a ton of usage available for the Clippers too. So you could basically play whoever you want here. That's going to play big minutes. So Michael Green, 4,400 isn't even that bad of an option. Just kind of worried about how big the rotation gets. It could be a lot of guys that end up playing, but that's why I would just focus on the high usage guy, Lou Will, Harrell, and then Landry Shamet, who we kind of know what he is. He's kind of a shooter off the bench. So I like him as well. For the Hawks, I was worried about Trae Young's minutes with Teague coming, and there's been no change to his minutes. Jeff Teague hasn't played together with Trae Young yet, more than 2 minutes a game. I suspect that'll eventually change, but right now, you really have to kind of just combine those two for 50 minutes. Trae Young was just super hot. I'm scared to overreact to this and just say, like, oh, he's going to play 39 minutes every night. I'm not sure that's necessarily the case. We saw him play 35 and a 1-point win. So the minutes might go down a little bit. And this isn't the easiest matchup for Trae Young, so I'm not saying I am totally out on Trae Young, but I'm leaning closer to out than in on him. I do have a little bit of concern with him. John Collins, 7,100. I like him a bit more. Low usage game against Toronto, but that was a really tough matchup. This matchup against the Clippers with no Paul George or Kawhi should be much easier for him. So 7,100, I don't mind him. Should Paul George play, by the way, I would love him at his price. He'd become immediately one of the top plays on the slate. In terms of the value options, Cam Reddish, finally had another good shooting game. You could go there. Could go with DeAndre Hunter. He's had back-to-back good games, but I don't really trust the shooting or the usage. But that's an option at 4,700 if you need some value. Other than that, Alex Len, I believe, is going to play. Let me check. He's questionable. So if he's out, you could play Damian Jones, but Damian Jones just isn't very good at basketball, so I would probably avoid that. So, yeah, that's really it for this game. Let's move on. Memphis at the Celtics, 232 total. Jaylen Brown has been ruled out for this game with an ankle after playing a fantastic game against the Lakers. I kind of think this one's a little more management than anything, but we'll see. Kemba Walker is not listed on the injury report with his knee, so he should be good to go. Yeah, he's probable. So the Celtics here are all just too cheap. So this is where your main source of value is going to be today. It's going to be on the Boston Celtics. Kemba Walker, 7,400. Jason Tatum, 7,500. Gordon Hayward, 5,800 in particular, all too cheap for their prices. You can even see right now, Fantasy Cruncher has Gordon Hayward projected at 36 fantasy points, which is over 6x value as a median. That sounds about right. It might even be a smidge higher, but I would think 36 sounds about right in terms of what I expect Gordon Hayward to score in this spot. So he's a fantastic option. Marcus Smart will be the next guy that people will play. I'm really worried about Smart. There's not really going to be a ton of usage available for him in this spot with Kemba on the floor still running the point most of the time. So I'm not going to pay this premium on Marcus Smart. I would rather pass on that and just focus on the other guys. Cantor 4,500. It's actually a pretty good Cantor spot. Memphis plays two bigs a lot. We could see a lot of more center minutes from the Celtics. So Cantor at 4,500 makes some sense. Other than that, for the Celtics, it really just is those big three. I wouldn't really start playing 5K Tice or Brad Wanamaker or any of the other guys that are going to get minutes. I think I would just really focus in on those big three and really focus in on them. I think they're some of the better plays on the entire slate. Memphis, Jonas Valanciunas could go off if he gets the minutes. He just really hasn't been getting the minutes. 21 in that good spot against the Pelicans. Played 32 against Cleveland and went off. It's really tough for me to just project him for 30 minutes when he's done it like twice in his last 10. That's tough. And he's certainly not going to get more than 32 no matter how well he plays. So that's a little bit tough to pay 6,700 for. Jaren Jackson Jr. is in a decent spot as well. But again, him too, really, none of these guys have been playing big minutes. And don't really expect that to change. They've got three guys in Clark, Jaren Jackson Jr., and Jonas. And until one of them gets hurt, they're all kind of just cannibalizing each other's upside. So, Dylan Brooks, 6,200. He's not going to pay this price. I know I've said that 3 times, but I've rostered Dylan Brooks all year, and I just know what he is. He's not a 30% usage guy. He's just not. And I say this as someone who loves Dylan Brooks and rostered him for 2 months straight when he was free because I thought people weren't giving him enough respect. But 6,200 is just way too much for Dylan Brooks. So don't fall into that trap. If I had a roster of Memphis Grizzly, probably would be Jay Crowder, 4,500. He's been playing a lot of minutes lately. Heading in before that Pelicans game, been playing pretty well. He's still not very happy with Boston, how they treated him on the way out the door. So I think that would be an option for you if you were looking for a Grizzly. But I don't think you need to have a Grizzly. It's not like it's mandatory to have a Grizzly. Just if you were looking for one, I think that's the one that I would have the most confidence in. Oh, also should note that Trae Young is questionable. I meant to mention that, and I forgot in the Atlanta section. He's questionable. So if he was to sit, obviously Jeff Teague 4K would become into the immediate top value play. And then all those guys like Hunter and Reddish would become much better plays as well. I expect Trae Young to play too. Just thought it was worth mentioning. Okay, let's move on to game number 6. The Wizards and Miami Heat. The Heat favored by 10. We have all sorts of injuries in this one. So, Jimmy Butler is questionable with the hip. Duncan Robinson is questionable with a ankle sprain. Oh, Butler and Dragic are probable. Okay, so that's not so bad. That makes it a little easier. Jimmy Butler, 8,500. One of the better plays on the slate, I would say. Along with Bam. Although Bam's not quite as good a spot. The Wizards, ever since they started playing Mahinmi all these minutes, actually pretty good against centers. So that's not true. I would rather play Jimmy Butler than Bam up top of my head. But you can just see how my brain even went to centers versus the Wizards before I was like, no, it's not true anymore. So do expect Bam to be pretty popular on this slate, and I'm not really all about it. With everyone else back, I don't really see the point in playing Nunn or any of these other bench Wizards or Heat. I think the one guy to be interested in is to see how many minutes James Johnson played. Last game just came out of nowhere, played a ton of minutes, played really well. So, that's definitely something to consider as well. Just see what that rotation looks like in terms of the bigs. But also why I'm just avoiding that whole situation, other than really Jimmy Butler. For the Wizards, they're back to playing 19 million guys, so it really kind of makes it Ian Mahinmi, 5,300. He's still been playing 24 to 30 plus minutes, and as a center, I expect he'll play more in this spot as well. So it's either Ian Mahinmi or it's Bradley Beal. 7,200 for Bradley Beal just feels way too cheap. Yeah, he hasn't shot the ball well lately, but they also haven't been in a competitive game in a while. This one could be competitive if the Heat, kind of try to sleepwalk through this one. So I don't mind Bradley Beal 7,200. I think there's upside with Bradley Beal at that price. He can go put up 58, 57, 60 at any time, as we kind of saw in the middle of December. So I wouldn't, he was a 9K player, and he's now 7,200. And with the DraftKings pricing on the whole being slightly tighter pricing, of course, meaning that players are more expensive for their fantasy points than normal. So scores are lower. So anytime you can find a player that you think has a lot of upside, you definitely need to be considering that, and Bradley Beal does have that type of upside here today. Other than that, for the Wizards, though, there's a lot of guys I like, but none of them are playing enough minutes for me to have any confidence in them right now. Until Brooks starts making a more consistent rotation and or someone else gets hurt to cut down the number of people in the rotation, it's really tough for me to do anything else other than those two. Lakers at the New York Knicks. Anthony Davis is probable, I'm pretty sure. He is, and so is Rajon Rondo. Anthony Davis, 9,900 is probably too cheap. I know he was on a minutes restriction against Boston. You have to think that's going to be lifted here. So I feel it's too cheap for Anthony Davis. 32 minutes of Anthony Davis, 28 minutes against the Knicks could even be enough. So that's a stud that I'm seriously considering today. He's got a lot of upside. LeBron 10-8. It's LeBron James. He can go off at any time. He's perfectly fine. I wouldn't talk you off of him. Wouldn't talk you on him. Kind of if I plug in my projections and I get some, great. If I don't, then that's okay too. I'm not going to be super paranoid about it either way. For the Knicks, Julius Randle facing the Knicks. He likes playing the Knicks. RJ Barrett, I think, is still out for a while. And Marcus Morris is a game time decision. If Marcus Morris can't go with that ankle, and it looked pretty bad when the injury happened, I was actually surprised he stayed in the game. So I wouldn't be surprised if he missed here. But if they do, that's just even more usage for Julius Randle. So again, with Julius Randle, I just really like the situation here. All the usage, should get the minutes here. Mike Miller, I suspect, will give him the minutes that he deserves. So I think that's a pretty solid option. Should Marcus Morris miss, it's Kevin Knox, it's Reggie Bullock. I wouldn't be thrilled with either one, to be honest. They're okay options, but they could also play like Damian Dotson or any one of these other guys, like Wayne Ellington could come back out of nowhere. So I wouldn't be super thrilled at playing them. But, again, I just mentioned pricing's tighter. Should you need some value, I guess you can go to Reggie Bullock and pray that he makes some shots. But I wouldn't be pounding the table for it. It's kind of one of those, if you need value, I guess he's value type guys. Other than that, don't really see any Lakers I need to play. They're all healthy. So it's just really the big two other than those that we just talked about. All right, we got some good games coming down the stretch here. Minnesota at Chicago. Cat is back. Cat finally put up the big minute game, 35 against the Denver, and that loss put up 50 fantasy points. Chicago should be even an easier matchup. No Wendell Carter Jr., no Daniel Gafford. They're basically playing Luke Cornett at center. If Karl Anthony Towns can't make Luke Cornett a bad defender, then I'm not sure he can make anyone a bad defender. So I really like this spot for Cat. I haven't really liked Cat a lot since the injury. I think this is the best spot we've had yet. In terms of the other Minnesota guys that I don't mind, I don't mind Covington, but the rest of this team, he's still playing so many guys in the rotation. It's 10, 11, Diop and Crab and Zhang and Okogie, and it's just too many interchangeable pieces for me on a 12-game slate to really take any chances on these guys. Now, if someone wants to get ruled out or something, that would help, but I'm not going to get super carried away with Minnesota players. It really, for me, is just Towns and maybe Covington. For the Bulls are one of the most injured teams right now in the entire NBA. So Carter, Gafford, and Otto Porter are all still listed as out for today. So again, it's Luke Cornett at center. I just it's hard for me to have any confidence in him at center. You would have to think they're going to have to use the Felicio size at some point to try to match up against Towns. But I'm not going to get to any of these big guys. Could be Thad Young, too, at 5K. That's an option. But I think they're going to try to go with Cornette, and then I think they'll try to go with Felicio, and then Thad, I think, would be like an emergency option at the center position. Zach LaVine, 9,000. Boy, that feels so expensive. But Zach LaVine's a player that can determine his own usage rate. We've seen it. Like, some games he just goes off and puts up 40% usage. And if he still has some revenge for Minnesota, I could see him just taking the ball. Like, revenge doesn't necessarily mean anything, and it's hard to predict. But when you have a player that can just determine his own usage against a team that you know he's going to be motivated for, I have to at least consider it. And, like, there's a ceiling here on Zach LaVine, even at 9,000. Like, it won't show up in my model, but I have to at least acknowledge the idea that his usage rate could just jump into the upper 30s in this spot. So, like, 56 isn't out of the question. 56, 55, 60. Like, it's possible from Zach LaVine, especially against this terrible Minnesota defense. So, I don't know if I get to any, but I have to at least consider the possibility that he can break the slate. And he'll be completely unowned. I don't think anyone's going to pay $9K for Zach LaVine. Okay, so really for me, it's LaVine, Towns, and Covington. Again, this team's too healthy to really use a ton of value plays here. God, we've got 4 games left. That is insane. All right, let us move on. Denver at Houston. So for Denver, we still have the same assortment of injuries. Millsap is out. Plumlee is out. Gary Harris is a game-time decision, I believe. And I believe Jamal Murray is a game-time decision. Okay, no, Jamal Murray's just been ruled out, and Gary Harris is doubtful. So it's the same injuries we've all been dealing with. The one exception, of course, is that Plumlee is out. But we actually have some clarity. Mike Malone just came out and said that Jarrett Vanderbilt will see meaningful minutes in the rotation. So I'm just going to assign him all the Mason Plumlee minutes, which I would assume is about 20 to 22. Actually, let's just make sure that's true. Can't say I've actually looked at a Denver rotation that carefully in a while. Oh, that's the wrong page. Nuggets. Also, sorry for the stupid background noise. They're leaf blowing in the middle of the winter outside for reasons I can't quite figure out. So Plumlee played only 10 minutes, so it looks like he got hurt in this game. So let me try another one. Yeah, 17. That's more like it. So I would expect Jarrett Vanderbilt to get 14 to 16 minutes. Basically, just take the Mason Plumlee minutes. So that makes this kind of interesting. Like, Jeremy Grant, 5,600, is no longer a value play. Michael Porter Jr., 6,600, no longer a value play. Will Barton, 7,400, is probably the best of these options. He just hasn't made any threes lately. I think that he still has a ceiling at this price for sure. So that's the one I think I have the most interest in. Just PJ Dozier, no. Jarrett Vanderbilt, I mean, no. It's funny, like, there should be more plays here, but DraftKings has done a good job jacking up the prices here. Just trying to look for something, but nothing's really popping. Yeah, all the values are on the Houston side. So, I really kind of think it's Will Barton and Jokic are bust. I'm not super high on Jokic, but he's an option. His usage has been better during these injuries, so that's an option if you want to go in that direction. For Houston, James Harden's been in one of these shooting slumps. He hasn't made a 3 in forever. What is that? That is 1 for 17. Like, it was bad before that point. James Harden does this, right? And like, one of these slates, James Harden's going to be 6% owned, and James Harden's going to go break a slate. So I think everyone right now is leaning Westbrook. Westbrook's had a set of fantastic games. Totally can see it happening again in this spot. The price is up. I don't mind it for Westbrook. I think it's totally fine, but don't forget about James Harden. Like, just because he's had a few bad shooting games doesn't mean James Harden's going to shoot bad forever. So that's the player I think that's staring the most out to me as potentially being low owned, which I know sounds crazy. But if James Harden is low owned, I have all the interest in the world, especially if there isn't a ton of value on the slate. Eric Gordon, 4,400, always a value option. He hasn't made any shots lately, but we know what he can do. We saw it in the Memphis game, saw it in the Portland game, and if he does that, he's going to pay off this price and be a guy that you can win a tournament with. So don't want you to oversleep on Eric Gordon as an option. Okay, 3 games left. Indiana at Phoenix. Indiana 1-point favorites. This is one of those games where there's nothing really that pops out too much off the page. Like, Ayton is nice. 8,600 is probably too expensive for him. Booker, 8,700 has been kind of on one of his tears. But, again, like with Ricky Rubio there, he's just going to have to make every shot. Because that assist rate just isn't going to be high. So that's the thing that scares me the most about Booker at this kind of approaching 9K price point. Ricky Rubio, 7,700. It's fine. Probably a smidge expensive based off that 60-point game he had a few games ago. Kelly Oubre is back from that concussion. Looked okay in his return. Price is going down a little bit. We kind of like him to get into the 6K range before I get super interested. But he's a guy that's going to play big minutes, has decent usage, and could definitely break the slate against TJ Warren. For sure. With Oubre back, Dario Saric just hasn't played the minutes that he was playing earlier, so don't get caught into that trap. Cam Johnson's out, but that really isn't going to change a whole lot. For Indiana, TJ Warren can shoot whenever TJ Warren wants to. Last game was not one of those games, but we've definitely seen games where TJ Warren just starts chucking up a ton of shots. This could be one of those spots against Kelly Oubre. Kelly Oubre is a pretty good defender. I think on paper I would like Jeremy Lamb better against Devin Booker defense, but we'll have to kind of see how Phoenix plays it. Like, they could play it the other way, so don't want to get too carried away with either one of those guys, but they do have GPP upside. Malcolm Brogdon, 7,100, is probably my favorite play. He hasn't really flashed a ton of ceiling since he came back from the injury, since that opening Philly game, but we know he's got it. Hasn't really just made any shots, but we know that's not going to be a long-term thing. Brogdon's been fantastic. So 7,100 might be the cheapest we see him. So I don't mind that price point as well. TJ McConnell played more minutes off the bench with Aaron Holiday's injury. If he was to sit again, TJ McConnell at 4,200 would be a sneaky spot for value. Played 20 to 24 minutes off the bench, put up about 20 to 24 fantasy points. Not the best value ever, but I could definitely see him playing beside Malcolm Brogdon at the finish. So there's definitely some upside with TJ McConnell, especially if he is playing well. Justin Holiday, similar situation. That's a pretty good value play as well if Aaron Holiday was to miss as well. Actually, wouldn't even mind. Where is he? Doug McDermott. He's been getting more minutes as well. So those guys are all kind of in that same. If Holiday misses, they go from like 18 minutes to 24 minutes, which kind of makes them all frisky. We don't have a ton of elite value on this slate. And against Phoenix in what's a pretty high total game at 221, definitely some interest there. All right, let's move on. New Orleans and San Antonio and New Orleans Pelicans. So unless you've been living under a rock, today's the debut of Zion Williamson. So they said he's not on a minutes limit and that they're going to just play him in short bursts. I'll probably give him about 24 to 28 minutes in this spot with that news. Normally I would be a little less with a knee injury, but they've clearly extended this timetable just to make sure he was 100% and was in condition. It's not like they're rushing him back. Like, he's been ready to go for weeks, and they've just been kind of just letting him totally get ready. So I don't think he's going to play like 20 minutes or anything like that. I'm going to actually assign him closer to 24, 26. I think that's about fair. 5K for Zion's a joke. He should be on everyone's roster. He won't be, but he really should be. Um, 237 total. I mean, I just don't know how you don't play Zion, but people will fade, and those I honestly think those people are just donating, to be honest. But I mean, it's possible he busts. Possible I'm wrong with the minutes, but he'll be the best point per dollar player in my model when it's done, all said and done today. There's just no way he's not. In terms of the rest of the Pelicans, we have absolutely no idea what their injury situation is going to be. Jrue Holiday came back last game. I assume he'll be back for the Zion debut, but he's a game time decision. Derek Favors is a game time decision. Okafor is a game time decision. Josh Hart's a game time decision. JJ Redick a game time decision. Really hard to talk about this when the entire team is a game time decision. The one thing I do want to note is if Holiday was to shockingly miss, Lonzo Ball would be the beneficiary of that. And then if the guys miss again, Melly would be the guy people would go to at center. I would go right back to Jackson Hayes. Just didn't play very well, but I don't think that they're just going to give up on him after one poor game. Much better matchup against Aldridge here than against Jonas Valanciunas, who's just big and strong. And they really just used Melly to stretch the floor because they didn't have an answer for Jonas. Aldridge isn't quite that type of banger inside, so I think Jackson Hayes is probably the guy I would have interest in over Melly, to be honest. But that's only if Favors and Okafor were both to miss again, so I'm not sure that's going to happen too. I think Favors will play, but also if Favors misses, Zion is back, so don't play any of those guys. Sorry, I totally forgot that Zion was back, and Zion will take a bunch of those power forward and center minutes, so yeah, actually, Hayes is still probably a good option, but Melly is probably firmly out of consideration. I think about that twice. But I'm not sure they're going to want to play Zion a lot center in his debut. But yeah, I still think Jackson Hayes is a good play. I think he'll play a lot of power forward. I'm not sure how much center Zion's really going to play today. But I guess we'll have to see the lineup. I guess if they start Ball, Holiday, Ingram, Zion, would really depend on who the fifth starter is. Like, I guess he could be playing center. And, like, if Favors is out. So, take a look at who the Pelicans start. I think that will give you a pretty clear indication on whether they want Zion to play center or power forward today. But Zion's the best play here, and then depending on injuries, there's probably definitely more for the Pelicans. Spurs side, DeMar DeRozan's been fantastic lately, and I actually was just listening to a podcast on it, and I can't remember who it was from. I want to say it was a Dunked On podcast, but I can't quote that for sure. Talking about why DeMar DeRozan's been so great, and I'm now a believer after being a total doubter. 8,200 in this pace-up spot just simply is too cheap. He's basically turned into like the de facto point guard. Look at the assists on him. 8, 9, 9. Like, he hasn't had a triple-double, but he's flirted with it now. It's like 3 games in a row. So DeMar DeRozan's a guy that's just, if people just haven't looked at what he's been doing lately, they'll just ignore him. But like, he's actually had 3 games in the last 6 that he's put up 9 and 9. So really like this spot for DeMar DeRozan. He'll be one of my higher owned players today, and it's really nice too because I'm gonna have a lot of Zion, so it's really easy to just compare them. But I don't think anyone's gonna pay 8,200 for DeMar DeRozan, and it's one of my favorite plays in the entire slate. LaMarcus Aldridge, 6,800 is fine, but he really hasn't flashed much ceiling since Superman DeRozan's turned up, but he's an option. I certainly wouldn't refuse it. All the other guards, I mean, I love DeJounte Murray, but it's clear the Spurs are just babying him back this year, so I just need to stop with my love of him. He'll have some big games, but really not a whole lot I can do about it, and let's see till he gets more and more minutes, so wouldn't touch him there. Same with White. Really wouldn't touch anyone else. So I think we can safely move on to the final game of the night. Utah at Golden State. Utah is probably a huge favorite, -8. You know, got to see what the status of Draymond Green is. He was expected to play last game, then didn't. If he's out, Paschal is always going to be a fantastic option. Russell, 8K against Utah. I'm not really wild about it, but it's D'Angelo Russell. He's got a high usage every time he touches the floor. So he could definitely go put up 50 again. So just not the greatest spot, but, he's a 31% usage player who's 8K. So he's definitely firmly in consideration for me. I'm just not like super thrilled about it. Bogdanovich is fine. He hasn't had a big game in a while, but that's going to change. Conley's been back. He's starting to get gradually more and more minutes. So he'll eventually break some slates once he starts playing more minutes. But we're not quite there yet. Probably like this time next week, I'd say, is the game where we'll kind of see that Mike Conley's going to play about 28 minutes and we can play him at like 5K or something. So that's an interesting option. But other than that, this game really doesn't have anything that I love. Marquise Chris is up with the team on the two-way, so he's been in the rotation. So just a lot of guys. So for me, it's really kind of just Russell and then some Bojan Bogdanovic because he's going to have a ceiling game at some point. But this isn't a game I'm really targeting all that much. So just to recap, my favorite studs on the day are actually DeMar DeRozan, but he really doesn't count as a stud. He's not even on the first page. But I really do love him today. Westbrook, Towns, and then Harden would probably be the four. And I don't mind Anthony Davis as well. Those are kind of the studs I've got the most interest in today. And then for the value, it's Zion, it's Gordon Hayward, Tatum we talked about very early on as well. And then really just kind of what happens with the Pelicans and the Knicks will kind of help you find some more value options. If you want to check out our content throughout the day, fantasycruncher.com. We've got articles up all day, and we're in our Discord channel as well. You can find information on that over at fantasycruncher.com. I do a 3 p.m. Eastern Twitch stream where I talk about all the updates to the injuries and whatnot. So you can check me out there. That link is in the bio. Again, please subscribe, like, and leave in the comments section the Boston Celtic that will score the most points today, and leave that in there with your Fantasy Cruncher handle if you want to be entered in a drawing to win a free week of Fantasy Cruncher Pro. With that, I'm CJ. We'll see you tomorrow.